For 10 seasons, Adventure Time wasn't just a cartoon. It was a living, breathing ecosystem that grew up exactly as fast as we did. It started as a boy fighting a skeleton and ended with a treatise on war, entropy, and the cyclical nature of existence. Standard Tuesday afternoon stuff. But the Land of Ooo is a lot like an iceberg, or maybe more like the Ice Kingdom itself. What we saw on Cartoon Network was just the surface level, the tip of the mountain. Beneath that, there is a deep, freezing ocean of content that never made it to air. We're talking about the lost episodes, and I don't just mean the pilot you watched on YouTube in 2008 with the grainy audio. I'm talking about the deleted scenes that were too scary for TV, the unproduced concepts that would have changed the entire lore, the comic book season 11 that was canon until it wasn't, and the literal timelines within the show that were erased from existence, taking entire character arcs with them. We're going to dig up the graves of the stories that didn't survive the cut. We're going to look at the blueprints of Ooo that were thrown in the trash. Why? Because in Adventure Time, the things that are missing are just as important as the things that are there. The holes in the world tell their own story. So, settle in and relax. We're going to very distant lands. And honestly, we might not make it back in one piece. If you are ready to dive into the lost episodes, please like the video and subscribe. Now get comfortable, let's rewind the tape. All the way back to 2007. The internet was slower, YouTube was mostly cat videos, and Pendleton Ward dropped a 7-minute fever dream called Adventure Time. If you watch it now, it feels wrong. The DNA is there, but the soul is different. For starters, Finn isn't Finn. He is Pen, named after Ward himself. His voice is deeper, grittier. He sounds less like a hero in training and more like a kid who just woke up from a nap in a dumpster. And Jake doesn't give sage advice yet. He just uses the internet and talks about rhombus things. The humour in the pilot is raw, chaotic, and aggressively random. It is internet humour, before the internet had fully figured out what that meant. It is less about the melancholy of a post-apocalyptic world, and more about Lincoln from Mars and floating ninja business. And here is the kicker, Nickelodeon commissioned this, and they hated it. They reportedly told Ward it was too weird and that kids wouldn't get it. They passed on it. Twice. They looked at the future of animation, the show that would define a generation, and said, "Nah, do you have any more talking sponges?" It took years before Cartoon Network saw the potential, but even they had a condition. Keep the weird, but give it heart. And thank Glob they did, because if Nickelodeon had picked it up, we might have gotten 10 seasons of random noises and fart jokes, instead of the emotionally devastating lore we crave today. Nickelodeon probably cries about this decision into their piles of SpongeBob money every night. But hey, their loss is our trauma. But before there was a Pen, and long before there was a Finn, there were Insomnia elves? Let's dig deeper into the archaeology of Ooo. In 2005, while studying at Cal Arts, Pendleton Ward made a student film called Brothers in Insomnia. If you watch it, it looks like Adventure Time drawn with a shaky hand at 3 a.m. It features 2 small, noodle-armed creatures trying to help an old man go to sleep. It is bizarre, it is quiet, it is deeply uncomfortable. But the key here isn't just the art style, though the dot eyes and rubber limbs are present and accounted for. It is the dialogue. You know that specific way Finn and Jake talk? That naturalistic, mumbling, over-talking vibe? The feeling that they aren't reading a script but just hanging out? That didn't come from a corporate writing room. It came from this short. It is the anti-cartoon voice. Most cartoons in the early 2000s were screaming at you. Ward's characters were whispering weird jokes to themselves. This short is the DNA of the show. It proves that before you can save the multiverse, you first have to figure out how to talk to your brother without making it awkward. Without this little experiment, we don't get the casual philosophy of Jake the dog. We don't get sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. We just get generic hero speeches. It turns out, the voice of a generation started as a mumble. Or maybe it's just proof that Pen Ward really needed a nap. If Brothers in Insomnia provided the voice, then a little sketchbook pitch called The Glorias provided the guts. Literally. Before Adventure Time was about mathematical heroes, Pen Ward was doodling a concept that was essentially Dungeons and Dragons played by people who really wanted to hit things. The Glorias was a rough pitch that never got animated, but if you look at the sketches you see the blueprint. You have a shape-shifting animal, You have a boy with a hat. But the tone is crunchy. It was violent. It was visceral. It was a straight-up dungeon crawl where monsters didn't poof into smoke. They got wrecked. Adventure Time eventually softened this edge, but it didn't remove it. It just painted over it with bright colours. Think about it. In Adventure Time, zombies explode. People get their limbs ripped off. The Lich wears the skin of a legendary hero like a suit. But because the blood is jelly and the limbs are made of cake, it's rated TV PG. The Glorias proves that Ooo was never meant to be a safe place. It was always a death world. The show just swapped the red blood for corn syrup so the censors wouldn't faint. In the end, the only difference between a gruesome massacre and a birthday party is whether the thing exploding is filled with guts or candy. Before Finn had Jake, Pendleton Ward had a bear named Bueno. If you dig into the archives of the mid-2000s webcomic scene, you'll find Bueno the bear, and looking at it is like seeing the skeleton of Adventure Time stripped of its flesh. The style is iconic. 2 black dots for eyes, a single line for a mouth, arms that act like cooked spaghetti. No noses, because apparently in Pendleton Ward's universe, the sense of smell is optional. Critics at the time might have called it doodling, but this aesthetic was a calculated stroke of genius. It's the theory of iconic abstraction. If you draw a character too realistically, they become a specific person. But if you draw a smiley face on a thumb, that could be anyone. That could be you. This simplicity is exactly why the show's emotional hits land like a sledgehammer. When a character with a hyper-realistic face cries, it's just ugly crying. But when a character who usually looks like a happy sticker suddenly frowns, you feel a shift in the tectonic plates of your soul. Adventure Time mastered the art of minimalist visuals, maximalist trauma. It tricks your brain. You lower your guard because the world looks like a colouring book. And then, once you're vulnerable, it hits you with questions about dementia and parental abandonment. The lesson? Never trust a cartoon character that doesn't have a nose. They are hiding secrets. Not every adventure makes it out of the treehouse. Some die on the storyboard table. One of the most famous victims of the cutting room floor is a short known simply as the Wand. If you dig deep enough into the fan wikis, you can find the full storyboard animatic. The premise is classic Season 1 simplicity. Finn and Jake find a magic wand. They try to get rid of the magic wand. The magic wand refuses to leave. It's essentially a slapstick routine about a cursed object with separation anxiety. They throw it away, it flies back. They bury it, it explodes the ground. It creates a chaotic escalation that feels like The Cat in the Hat directed by David Lynch. So, why didn't it air? It wasn't too violent, and it wasn't too scary. The prevailing theory is that it was just offbeat. It lacked that specific Ooo flavour. It felt more like a Looney Tunes sketch than a quest. In The Wand, the magic is annoying. In the actual show, magic is usually a terrifying force of nature that demands a sacrifice. Maybe the network felt that watching 2 guys yell at a stick for 7 minutes was testing the audience's patience. Or maybe they realised that in a world where dogs stretch and rainbows speak Korean, a magic wand is actually the most boring thing in the room. It remains a ghostly remnant of what could have been, a timeline where the show leaned harder into vaudeville than lore. But let's be honest, they probably made the right call. Sometimes magic is just too dangerous for network TV, especially when it doesn't have a good punchline. Before a show hits the airwaves, it lives in a document called the Pitch Bible. This is the sacred text, the rule book, the Constitution. But if you read the original Adventure Time Bible, you are reading the history of a different dimension. In this proto-universe, the Enchiridion wasn't a terrifying artifact that could tear holes in the multiverse. It was genuinely just a handbook. It had chapters like How to Kiss Princesses and How to Knot a Tie. It was a Boy Scout manual for magical nerds. And then there is the Lich. In the final show, the Lich is a cosmic horror. He is the inevitability of entropy. He is the scholar of Golb. His speeches chill your blood because they are philosophically sound arguments for why everything should die. But in the early documents, he was just a skeleton guy. He was the Lich King, a standard fantasy villain you'd find on page 4 of a D&D monster manual. He wanted to suck the life out of the land because, well, that's just what evil skeletons do. He didn't have the weight of the mushroom bomb behind him. He didn't have the gravitas of Ron Perlman's voice whispering "Fall." This is the most crucial lost episode of all, the version of the show that stayed a generic fantasy. The writers realised that a hero is only as good as his villain. If Finn was going to grow up, his monsters had to grow up too. They had to stop being obstacles and start being existential threats. The show grew the beard, as they say. It looked at its own silly pitch Bible, grabbed a red marker, and wrote "Make it sadder" in the margins. And thank goodness, because a lich that just wants to steal princesses is annoying, but a lich that wants to extinguish the light of consciousness? Now that is a Friday night. You think you've seen every episode? Well, that depends entirely on your zip code. If you grew up watching Adventure Time in the UK, Australia, or parts of Asia, you were essentially watching a glitched timeline, a light version of Ooo where the edges were sanded down. The most famous victim of this reality shift, the deer. In the episode No One Can Hear You, there is a moment that is seared into the cerebral cortex of every American child. The stag stands up on 2 legs, slowly removes its hooves like gloves, and wiggles 10 human fingers. It is deeply, fundamentally wrong. It is the kind of image that wakes you up at 3 a.m. Censors in the UK took one look at those fingers and said, absolutely not. They cut the reveal entirely. If you watched it on Cartoon Network UK, the deer was just a weird deer. The horror was erased. But they didn't just cut the nightmare fuel. They came for the romance too. In various international broadcasts, references to dating, kissing, or even the word girlfriend were surgically removed. Entire context clues about Marceline and Princess Bubblegum were lost in translation, or rather, lost in deletion. Apparently fighting a lich who represents the cessation of life is fine, but holding hands, that is where we draw the line. That is simply too dangerous for the youth. This censorship created a massive Mandela effect in the fan base. Half the world remembers a goofy adventure show. The other half remembers a psychological horror where woodland creatures have human hands, and everyone is crying about their exes. It raises a fun little philosophical question. Is it better to be protected from the nightmare, or to let the nightmare shape you? Personally, I think the trauma builds character. But hey, maybe the British censors just really wanted to save parents some money on therapy bills. Now, let's talk about the longest-running hidden show within the show. If you have watched even 5 minutes of Adventure Time, you know the snail. It is the ultimate Where's Waldo of Ooo. In every single episode, there is a waving snail hidden in the background. It's cute. It's an Easter egg. It's a fun game to play with your eyes while your brain processes the colours. But here is the thing. The snail isn't just a background gag. It is the protagonist of a silent, terrifying horror movie that was playing in the corner of your screen for 2 seasons. In the Season 2 finale, Mortal Recoil, the lich is defeated, but his essence, his toxic green soul, needs a host. And who is the only living thing around? The snail. From that moment on, the game changed. If you go back and watch the episodes between Season 3 and Season 4, the snail is still there. But it isn't waving anymore. It has green eyes. It looks angry. It looks determined. While Finn and Jake were busy fighting cute monsters and dealing with relationship drama, the snail was slowly, methodically, working its way toward the Enchiridion. It was a slow-motion apocalypse happening in the blurry background of the frame. This culminates in the episode In Your Footsteps, where the snail finally makes its move and breaks the lich's seal. We treated the snail like a mascot. We laughed when we found him. Oh look, there he is on the shelf. Meanwhile, he was carrying the literal embodiment of death in his shell. It is a masterclass in subliminal storytelling. It teaches us a lesson that most cartoons are too afraid to teach. The most dangerous threats aren't the monsters roaring in your face. They are the quiet things waving at you from the corner of the room. So next time you see something cute in the background of your life, maybe double-check its eyes, just in case. If you were watching Adventure Time in broadcast order, Season 1 felt like a fever dream. It was wizards, candy people, and random dungeons. It felt like Narnia on sugar. And then, Episode 8 happened. Business Time. On the surface, it's a goofy episode. Finn and Jake find a block of ice, melt it, and release a bunch of middle-aged men in suits who love synergy and quarterly projections. They hire them to do chores. It's funny because, hey, look at these boring guys fighting monsters with briefcases. But wait a minute. Pause the laugh track.
Why were there men in suits frozen in an iceberg? This was the Planet of the Apes moment for the entire series. It was the first hard confirmation that Ooo wasn't a magical otherworld. It was Earth, our Earth, destroyed, flooded and regrown. These weren't magical creatures. They were relics of the old world. They were us. Suddenly the piles of junk in the background, the crushed cars, the televisions, the rebar, stopped being random set dressing and started looking like a graveyard. The Land of Ooo wasn't a fantasy kingdom. It was a post-apocalyptic scavenger hunt built on top of a nuclear crater. Business Time flipped the switch. It transformed the show from a D&D campaign into a story about what happens after the end of the world. It tells us that even after the bombs fall, and the magic returns, and the mutants rise up, middle management will still survive. The cockroaches won't inherit the Earth. The guys who love spreadsheets will, and honestly, that is the scariest lore drop of them all. Christmas specials are supposed to be cozy. You drink cocoa, you learn a lesson about giving, and maybe Santa shows up to save the day. Adventure Time looked at that tradition and said, what if we did the Blair Witch Project but with crippling dementia? Holly Jolly Secrets is technically a 2-part holiday episode, but structurally, it is a found-footage horror movie. The entire premise is Finn and Jake breaking into the Ice King's video diary to find his secrets. For the first 10 minutes, it's exactly what you expect. It's the Ice King talking to his penguins, eating gross food, and trying to write fanfiction. It is cringe comedy at its finest. But then, they find the tape. The screen flickers. We don't see the blue skin or the long nose. We see a normal man, Simon Petrikov. This isn't just a flashback. It's a documentation of a psychological breakdown. We watch, in real time, as the crown eats his mind. We see him pleading with the camera, apologising to his fiancée Betty, and terrified of the voice he hears in his head. I can feel myself slipping away, he says. This is the moment the Ice King stopped being a villain and became a tragedy. We realise that the guy who kidnaps princesses isn't doing it out of malice. He is a confused, senile old man blindly grasping for the princess he lost 1,000 years ago. He isn't evil. He's just sick. Holly Jolly Secrets took the found footage genre, which is usually about monsters in the woods, and used it to show us the monster in the mirror. It forces us to ask the hardest question in the entire series. If you lose your memories, your personality, and your sanity, are you still you? Simon Petrikov died on that tape. The Ice King is just the ghost haunting his body. Happy holidays, kids! Have you ever had a dream where you wake up, brush your teeth, and go to school? Only to realise you're actually still asleep and also you aren't wearing pants. That is the episode King Worm, and honestly, it might be the most confusing 11 minutes of television ever broadcast on Cartoon Network. If you are paying attention to the continuity, King Worm makes absolutely no sense. It aired in Season 4, but Finn is referencing events from the Season 2 finale. He has the wrong sword. He has the wrong emotional baggage. The timeline is broken. The leading theory: this was a lost episode, or at least a lost concept, that was meant to bridge the gap between seasons but got shelved. When they finally dusted it off, they didn't bother fixing the timeline errors. They just leaned into the chaos. They used dream logic as a narrative band-aid. Why does Finn have the golden sword? Because it's a dream. Why is the Lich here? Because it's a dream. Why is his reflection melting? Because you ate pizza before bed. It is a brilliant, lazy, and terrifying storytelling device. It turns continuity errors into psychological horror. The episode forces Finn to confront his deepest insecurities, the ocean, the ghost lady, his own fragility, in a loop that feels inescapable. It suggests that perhaps all of Ooo is just a construct of a sleeping boy's mind. It touches on the coma theory, the idea that Finn is in a coma and imagining the magical world. King Worm winks at this theory, laughs, and then eats its own tail. It leaves us with a lingering, uncomfortable thought. If you can't tell the difference between the waking world and the dream world, does the difference even matter? Or maybe the real lesson is simpler. Never make eye contact with a worm that has hypno-swirls. You will lose 3 days of your life and wake up questioning the fabric of reality. Be careful what you wish for is a cliché, but in Adventure Time, it's a threat. When Finn wishes that the Lich never existed, he doesn't just delete a bad guy. He deletes the entire history of Ooo. He creates the Farmworld. This arc is essentially a pilot for a Lost series. It is a gritty, desaturated reboot of the show where the magic is gone. The colours are muted, and Finn isn't a hero. He's just a kid trying to survive a nuclear winter with a robot arm and a mullet. In this timeline, Simon Petrikov stopped the mushroom bomb, but the price was his life. The crown didn't drive him mad over centuries. It crushed him in seconds under the weight of the ice. And the world that remains? It's bleak. It's a world of gangs, scarcity, and depression. It's Adventure Time if it was directed by the guy who made The Road. This storyline forces us to confront a terrifying idea. Maybe the apocalypse was the best thing that ever happened to Earth. Without the bomb, humanity survived, sure. But the wonder died. The Candy Kingdom never rose. Vampire Queens never sang bass. There were no Jake sandwiches. Just cold mud and survival. It challenges the very premise of fixing the past. We usually assume that if we could undo the tragedy, everything would be perfect. But Adventure Time argues that the tragedy is the fertilizer. The scars are what let the magic grow. The Farmworld is a timeline that technically saved the world, but lost its soul. Finn eventually escapes, leaving that reality behind. And honestly, it's hard to blame him. Better to live in a dangerous Technicolor nightmare than a safe grey reality where the only adventure is trying not to freeze to death. We need to talk about the time Finn died of old age. In the episode Puhoi, Finn gets sad about a girl, so he does what any rational teenager would do. He builds a pillow fort to sulk in, but instead of finding a quiet spot to cry, he crawls into a portal to another dimension, the Pillow World. Now, usually this would be a quirky 10-minute adventure. Finn fights a fluff monster, learns a lesson and goes home. But Adventure Time doesn't play by the rules. Finn stays. He doesn't just stay for dinner, he stays for life. He marries a pillow woman named Rosalinen. He has pillow children named Jay and Bonnie. He grows a beard. He gets wrinkles. He lives decades in this soft, muffled reality. He forgets his old life. He forgets Jake. He is just happy. And then he dies. As an old man, surrounded by his loving family, he passes away. His spirit flies through the cosmos, bounces off the entity of chaos itself, Golb, and lands back in the treehouse. He wakes up. He's a teenager again. Jake is finishing a sentence he started 40 years ago. And here is the kicker. Finn forgets. Within seconds, the memories of his wife, his children, and his entire life in the Pillow World fade away like a dream. He shakes it off and grabs a snack. This is a literal lost lifetime. An entire existence, filled with love and years of character development, wiped clean from the hard drive of his brain. It is terrifying because it implies that our experiences only matter if we remember them. If you live a good life, but the slate is wiped clean at the end, did it happen? Golb's appearance confirms that this wasn't just a dream, it was a timeline that was consumed, digested by the void. So the next time you wake up from a nap feeling groggy, ask yourself, did you just sleep for an hour? Or did you live an entire life that the universe decided to delete? If Puhoi was a lost lifetime of happiness, the Hall of Egress is a lost lifetime of isolation. This episode is widely considered one of the best in the entire series, and for good reason. It is a psychological thriller disguised as a dungeon crawl. Finn enters a cave, he finds a door, he leaves. But when he opens his eyes, he is back in the cave. The gimmick seems simple. To escape the Hall of Egress, Finn has to keep his eyes closed. If he opens them for even a second, the timeline resets, and he is back at the start. But think about the implications of that mechanic. Finn doesn't just stumble out of the cave in an afternoon. He spends weeks, months, maybe years living blindly. He navigates forests, rivers and mountains without ever seeing them. He learns to survive solely on instinct and sound. We see montages of him failing over and over again. We see his frustration. We see him build a weird little shrine. We see him essentially go feral. This is a lost episode that takes place entirely within the edit. We are watching a boy grow up in the dark. The philosophical weight here is staggering. It is a lesson in ego death. Usually Finn wins by fighting, by looking evil in the eye and punching it. But here, the only way to win is to stop looking. to stop controlling, to surrender. He has to shed his identity as a hero and just exist. He eventually escapes, but the Finn who walks out of that cave is not the same kid who walked in. He is quieter. He is stranger. He has spent more time alone in the dark than he has spent with his friends. And when he finally makes it back to Jake, he doesn't explain it. He can't. How do you explain to your dog that you just lived through a metaphor for Buddhist detachment? The Hall of Egress teaches us a hard truth. Sometimes, to find the way out, you have to stop trying to be the main character of your own story. You just have to walk, and hope you don't bump into a tree. For almost 300 episodes, Ooo was flat. It was beautiful, sure, but it was 2D, ink and paint. And then suddenly it was made of sweater material. Bad Jubies is the stop-motion episode directed by Kirsten Lepore, and watching it feels less like watching a cartoon and more like hallucinating in a craft store. This episode sits in the lineup like a strange artifact. It was plagued by production delays. It was announced, then vanished, then reappeared a year later like a cryptic message in a bottle. For a while, fans thought it was a myth. A lost episode before it even aired. But the reason it feels so crucial isn't just the gimmick, it's the texture. Adventure Time is post-apocalyptic, right? But usually the ruins are bright pink and blue. In stop motion, you see the grit. You see the fuzz on Finn's shirt. You see the actual dirt. The world suddenly feels tactile. It feels heavy. The plot is deceptively simple. A storm is coming, and it brings bad Jubies. Finn and weird stop-motion LSP try to build a bunker. Jake decides to do absolutely nothing. He sits in nature and vibes, and he's right. The storm passes not because they fought it, but because Jake connected with it. This episode is a lost medium because it shows us a version of Ooo that has weight. It reminds us that this isn't just a drawing, it's a place. A place where you could scrape your knee, a place where the apocalypse feels soft like old felt. It's a reminder that in a world full of monsters and magic, sometimes the most radical act of heroism is just lying down in the grass and refusing to panic. Plus, watching Jake turn into a literal bulldozer made of clay is satisfying in a way that defies scientific explanation. And then there is the time Adventure Time briefly turned into an experimental Japanese anime. Food Chain is a guest episode directed by the legendary Masaki Yuasa. If you know that name, you know what to expect. If you don't, go watch Devilman Crybaby and then come back after you've recovered from the emotional scarring. This episode is visually spectacular. The lines are loose, the colours are neon, and the physics are optional. But underneath the acid trip visuals, this is arguably the darkest 7 minutes in the show's history. Finn and Jake are turned into birds. Then they are eaten by bigger birds. They die. They decompose. They become bacteria in the dirt. They are eaten by plants. They become caterpillars. They get married as caterpillars, and then they die again. It is a relentless, catchy musical number about the inevitability of death. Most episodes of Adventure Time are about fighting monsters to save the day. Food Chain looks at the camera and says, "There is no saving the day, there is only the digestive tract." It presents the circle of life not as a majestic Disney concept, but as a terrifying mechanical process. You live, you eat, you get eaten, you become dirt. Think about it. Finn runs around a massive open world, collects random loot, fights skeletons and builds a house. Adventure Time is Minecraft with better dialogue. But is it canon? This is the ultimate lost episode because it exists in a bubble universe. It has no place in the timeline. It is a pocket dimension where the trauma of the gun war doesn't exist. There is no Golb. There is no fern dying. There is only the rhythmic, soothing sound of mining cobblestone. It offers a brief respite from the heavy serialization of the final season. It reminds us of the simple joy of the early days. Just a boy, a dog, and a quest to find a diamond. It also gives us the terrifying image of Lemongrab playing Minecraft, which is exactly as stressful as you imagine. Diamonds and Lemons proves that even in the face of the apocalypse, there is something zen about simple labour. Sometimes you don't need to unpack your childhood trauma or fight a chaos god. Sometimes to feel better, you just need to dig a hole and then fill it back up again. When corporate synergy actually works, it's frightening. But hey, at least we got to see Tree Trunks being a griefer. And then there is Cuba. the floating geometry man from the future with the voice of a nervous robot. If you skip the Graybles episodes, I get it. They feel like filler. They are anthology episodes. 5 short, disconnected stories tied together by a loose theme like the 5 senses or the 5 stages of grief. Okay, I made that last one up, but it fits. But look closer. These aren't just random skits. They are glitches in the narrative matrix. In a standard TV show, if the main character isn't in the room, the camera turns off. The universe pauses until the hero walks back into frame. But the Graybles prove that Ooo doesn't wait for Finn. We see the lives of minor characters unfolding in real time. We see a cookie having an existential crisis. We see a fox dealing with depression. We see the mundane, boring, beautiful moments that usually get cut to make room for the boss fight. It is the definition of Sonder, the realization that every random background NPC has a life as complex and terrifying as yours. And consider the framing device. Cuba is watching these clips from a spaceship in the distant future. He is an archivist. He is literally digging through the lost episodes of history to entertain himself. The end. And yet, it's joyous. Finn and Jake are singing while they are being digested. This feels like a lost pilot for a version of the show where morality doesn't exist. There are no heroes or villains here, just predators and prey. It forces us to confront the fact that in the grand scheme of the universe, our main characters are just calories for something bigger. But hey, at least the song is a banger. If you're going to be dissolved by stomach acid, you might as well hum a catchy tune while it happens. Circle of life? More like circle of trauma. Okay, let's address the elephant in the server room, the Minecraft episode. Diamonds and Lemons is strange. It aired right before the series finale, in the middle of the Gun War arc, completely interrupting the tension. 1 minute we're preparing for the ultimate battle for the fate of Ooo, and the next minute, Finn is punching a tree to get wood. Usually when a TV show does a crossover with a video game, it feels like a board meeting with a pulse. It reeks of brand synergy. It's a commercial disguised as content. But somehow, this episode works. And it works because it highlights a fundamental truth about Adventure Time that we often ignore. Ooo is already a sandbox game. He is us. He is clicking through the digital ruins of the past, trying to find meaning in a clip of a boy high-fiving a bear. The Graybles tell us that history isn't a clean linear story written by victors. It's a messy pile of digital files, corrupted data, and random moments of people eating sandwiches. The world is bigger than the hero. The story is happening everywhere, all at once. And honestly, the fact that Cuba has to hide from his sister Toda while recording these proves that even in the futuristic space utopia, sibling rivalry is still a death sentence. If there is one character who tests the patience of the audience, it's Lemon Hope. He is whiny, he is selfish, and he essentially tells Princess Bubblegum to take her hero's journey and shove it. He doesn't want to save his people. He just wants to run in a field and look at clouds. But the end of his 2-part special, Lemon Hope Part 2, gives us something that isn't just a conclusion to his arc. It is a window into the death of the show itself. In the final minutes, we get a montage set to a haunting lullaby. We watch Lemon Hope walk, and he walks for a long time, 1,000 years to be exact. He walks past a world that has moved on without him. We see the Candy Kingdom, but it isn't made of candy anymore. It's a futuristic, abandoned metropolis. We see the broken remains of the Gumball Guardians rusting in the river. We see a landscape that has been scorched by war. This was our very first glimpse of the 1000+ era, the timeline of Shermie and Beth, long before the series finale made it canon. At the time, fans thought this was a metaphor, but no, it was a literal flash forward to the graveyard of the plot. Lemon Hope returns to his old room in the Castle of Lemons, which is now just dust, lies down in his bed, and passes away, alone. It is arguably the most melancholic sequence in the entire franchise. It recontextualizes the entire struggle of the show. All those wars Finn fought, all those times PB stressed about the kingdom. In the end, it all fell apart anyway. Gravity won. But there is a twisted beauty in it. Lemon Hope got exactly what he wanted. He wanted ultimate freedom. And the only way to be truly free of obligation is to outlive everyone who could possibly ask you for a favour. He achieved the ultimate victory, He died last. Is it sad? Yes. But in the Land of Ooo, happily ever after doesn't mean you live forever. It just means you get a really long nap at the end of the road. And frankly, after walking for a millennium without shoes, the guy deserved a rest. For years, rumours swirled on message boards about an Adventure Time movie. Not a TV special, a theatrical release. Popcorn, red carpets, the whole deal. Well, it turns out, we got it. We just had to watch it in 8 11-minute chunks. The miniseries Islands is widely believed to be the repurposed script for the cancelled Adventure Time feature film, and when you watch it back to back, the structure screams Hollywood blockbuster. It has the classic 3-act structure. Act 1, the departure. Finn leaves home to find his origins. Act 2, the journey. Island hopping, weird side quests, and Alva the mute bear. Act 3, the revelation. Meeting Minerva and escaping the utopia. But because it became a miniseries instead of a movie, something magical happened. It got to breathe. If Islands had been a 90-minute movie, the executives would have demanded an explosion every 15 minutes. We would have gotten a 10-minute action sequence of Finn fighting a giant eel. Instead, because it was a TV show, we got an entire episode dedicated to BMO trying to date a cloud. We got quiet moments of Susan Strong remembering her past. Most importantly, we got the conversation with Minerva. In a blockbuster, Finn would have had to physically fight his mum to liberate the humans. It would have been a battle of ideologies played out with laser swords. But in the Islands we got, the conflict is resolved with empathy. Finn doesn't destroy the system, he understands it. He realises his mother isn't a villain, she's a terrified parent who just wants to keep people safe. The climax of this movie isn't a Death Star blowing up. It's a boy hugging his mom and telling her it's okay to let go. We lost the theatrical experience, sure. We didn't get to see Jake on an IMAX screen. But we gained the emotional nuance that a 2-hour runtime usually suffocates. Sometimes, the best way to save the world isn't with a bang, but with a really long, awkward conversation about boundaries. And honestly, seeing Alva the bear try to communicate using only interpretive dance was worth the price of admission alone. Coming off the emotional high of Islands, you would expect the show to give Finn and Jake a break. Maybe a nice boat ride home, maybe a montage of them eating sandwiches. Instead, we got Orb. Orb is not really an episode of television. It is a fever dream recorded on magnetic tape. It is the narrative equivalent of waking up at 4 a.m. and writing down your thoughts in a journal that turns out to be a ham sandwich. The plot, Finn, Jake, and BMO are swallowed by a cloud. They start hallucinating. They obsess over bananas. They shrink. They melt. It serves as the bridge between the Islands miniseries and the Elements miniseries, but usually a bridge is made of concrete. This bridge is made of pure distilled anxiety. This episode feels like a lost artifact because it operates entirely on nightmare logic. There is no villain to punch. The antagonist is the atmosphere itself. It foreshadows the corruption of Ooo that's about to happen in Elements, turning everyone into candy, slime, fire, or ice. But it does so by breaking the characters' minds first. It shows us that the real threat to Ooo isn't an invasion. It's a rewriting of reality. But the star of this nightmare is BMO. In the dreamscape, BMO becomes a director, casting Finn and Jake in a play about their own insecurities. It is a meta-commentary on the show itself. BMO realises that reality is malleable, so he decides to put on a beret and start shouting, "Cut!" Orb teaches us that when reality starts to crumble, the only person you can trust is the little robot who thinks he's a real boy. Because in a world that makes no sense, the hallucinations of a game console are the closest thing we have to the truth. Also, never trust a banana. It might be your subconscious trying to tell you that you're failing math class. If you study history, you know that some wars last 100 years. The gun war lasted about an afternoon. We need to talk about the end of the world, or rather, the end of the show. Season 10 introduces us to Gumbaldia, a rival kingdom built by Princess Bubblegum's evil uncle Gumbald. It was set up to be the ultimate clash of civilizations. Candy versus, well, slightly different Candy. Gumbald is a fascinating villain because he is a mirror. He is what PB would be if she had zero morals instead of just sketchy ones. He is industrial, he is petty, and he has a moustache,
which is universal shorthand for do not trust this man. But if you watched the final season as it aired, you felt something strange. Whiplash. 1 minute Gumbold is introduced. The next he has a city. The next the armies are marching. The pacing went from a leisurely stroll to a sprint. Why? Because the show got cancelled. The crew was given the news that season 10 was the end, and they had to wrap up a decade of storytelling in a handful of episodes. The lost episodes of this era are the ones that would have let this war breathe. We missed the political manoeuvring. We missed the slow radicalisation of the Candy people. We missed the chess match between the niece and the uncle. Instead, we got the Cliff's Notes version. We got a war that started and ended before you could finish a bag of popcorn. This is the phantom pain of the finale. We can feel the ghost of a longer, more complex season that was amputated by network executives. But maybe there is a silver lining. Because the war was cut short, the finale wasn't about the battle. It was about the nightmare realm of Golb. The show realised it didn't have time for a political thriller, so it pivoted to a cosmic horror story about the power of music. It feels rushed, yes, but in a way, it fits. War is rarely satisfying. It's messy, it's chaotic, and usually it ends not with a bang, but with a bunch of people standing around realising they almost died for nothing. And isn't that just like family reunions? So, the screen went black, the Come Along With Me song faded out, and you sat there, staring at your own reflection in the TV screen, wondering what you were supposed to do with the rest of your life. For a brief, shining moment, there was a lifeboat. Boom! Studios released a comic book series with the incredibly promising title Adventure Time Season 11. It promised to be the direct continuation, the immediate aftermath, the story of what happens the morning after the end of the world. But here is the heartbreak. It isn't real. Adam Muto, the showrunner who steered the ship into the finale, went on record and confirmed that the comics are not canon. They are official, they are licensed, but in the eyes of the show's god, they are essentially high-budget fanfiction. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't read them. In fact, ignoring them means missing out on the lost season that bridges the gap to the future. The comics tackle the messy logistics that the finale skipped. How do the humans from the islands actually integrate into Ooo? How does Simon adjust to being a normal man in a world that only remembers him as a wizard? What does the world look like now that Golb has taken a bite out of reality? It explores the scorched earth. It shows us a world that is rebuilding, not just physically, but emotionally. It gives us the clean-up crew arc. The tragedy of Season 11 is that it is a ghost story. It gives us answers, like how Marceline and Bubblegum navigate their relationship now that it's out in the open. But those answers come with an asterisk. It is a glimpse into a timeline that could have been. But here is a secret about lore. Canon is just a suggestion. It is a fence built by the creators. If you read a panel where Finn helps Simon pick out a tie, and it makes you feel something, then it happened. The lost season isn't lost because it didn't happen. It's lost because it happened on paper instead of pixels. And frankly, paper cuts hurt just as much as digital ones. While Season 11 was a look at the future, the Simon and Marcy comic miniseries was a brutal look at the past. If you thought the episode I Remember You hurt, you might want to call your therapist before you read this. These comics are often overlooked because again they are extended universe material, but they contain some of the most critical lost episodes of Simon Petrikoff's descent into madness. The show gives us the highlights. We see him put on the crown, we see him leave Marcy, we see the tragedy in broad strokes. But the comics? They give us the day-to-day survival. They show us Simon struggling to find food. They show us the specific moments where he starts forgetting words. They show us the terror of a man realizing he's becoming dangerous to the only person he loves. There is a specific kind of horror in the mundane details of the apocalypse that a kids' show just can't air. The show had to keep things moving. It had to be an adventure. The comics had the luxury of stillness. They could spend pages on Simon just looking at a can of soup, trying to remember what it's for. These stories are lost canon not because they contradict the show, but because they deepen it to a level that is almost uncomfortable. They fill in the gaps with concrete sadness. They turn the Ice King from a tragic figure into a visceral one. Reading them feels like finding a box of old photos in a burning house. The first special, simply titled BMO, was advertised as a fun, futuristic romp. BMO goes to space. BMO becomes a sheriff. BMO fights a dying space station called the Drift. It felt like a classic Lost episode from the middle of the show's run, a side quest that didn't affect the main plot. But then, the final minute happened. BMO saves the day, falls back to Earth, crashes, and looks up to see a very young Finn and Jake playing with wooden swords. The entire special wasn't a sequel, it was a prequel. This reveal hits like a freight train because it recontextualizes everything we just watched. The friends BMO made, the rabbit girl Y5, the tragedy of the Drift. All of that happened before the first episode of the show. It means BMO has lived entire lifetimes that we never knew about. It highlights the tragedy of Y5. She changes her name, she overthrows a corrupt system, she becomes a hero, and BMO just leaves. BMO bounces away to the next adventure, effectively rebooting his life to become the video game console for two boys in a treehouse. It frames BMO not just as a cute robot, but as an eternal wanderer. He's a character who collects stories and then leaves them behind. You know how the story ends, you know the fire wins, but seeing the smiles in the photos makes the loss feel fresh again. The ink on these pages isn't just black, it's the colour of memories fading in real time. Paper cuts hurt, as they say, but these stories, they don't just cut. They leave a scar that looks suspiciously like a crown. For 10 years we started every episode with a fist bump. We flew past the Candy Kingdom, we saw the Ice King smiling, and we ended on a boy and his dog. It was a promise of fun. Then the finale aired, and the promise was broken. The new intro for Come Along With Me is the single most dense 30 seconds of lore in the history of animation. It is a Lost series compressed into a music video. We aren't in Ooo anymore, we're in Ooo 1000+. We fly past a desolate landscape. The Candy Kingdom is gone, replaced by a massive abandoned city that looks suspiciously like a human metropolis. The prize ball guardians, those massive gumball machines, are walking through the wasteland, scooping up citizens and trapping them in stasis. It's terrifying. It implies that Princess Bubblegum's dream of a safe kingdom eventually curdled into a dystopia where safety meant being locked in a plastic ball forever. We see the Ice King's crown, now worn by a bird thing named Gunter. No, not that Gunter. We see the stone ducks. We see Marceline's house, still standing but lonely. This intro confirms the darkest timeline. Everyone we love is dead. Finn is gone. Jake is gone. The treehouse is a massive tree blooming around a sword that has rusted into the bark. But here is the beauty of it. It isn't sad. It's just time. The colours are still bright. New heroes, Shermie and Beth, are raising their fists. The cycle is starting over. This sequence is the ultimate Lost episode because it tells us the end of the story without saying a word. It tells us that nothing lasts forever. Not even the show itself. Kingdoms fall. Heroes die. But the adventure keeps going. Everything stays, but it still changes. It is a brutal lesson for a cartoon to teach. But looking at that giant tree growing out of the ruins of the past, you realise something comforting. The fun never actually ends. It just changes players. When Adventure Time ended, we thought the book was closed. But then HBO Max knocked on the door with a bag of money and whispered, "Distant lands." The lost lore here is that the Drift is still up there. While Finn was fighting the Ice King in Season 1, Y5 was up in space, rebuilding her society, looking down at Earth, wondering where her little robot friend went. It's a reminder that everyone has a backstory that would break your heart if you knew it. Even the calculator you use to play video games. And honestly, realising that BMO was a decorated space war hero, while Finn was using him to play Conversation Parade, adds a layer of surrealism that I didn't know I needed. And then there is the fanfiction. Usually when a show does a gender swap episode, it is a gimmick. It is a one-off joke to sell toys. Adventure Time did that in Season 3 with Fiona and Cake. It was cute, it was funny, it was written by the Ice King. But then, something impossible happened. The joke grew up. Adventure Time. Fiona and Cake on HBO Max is the ultimate Lost series because it literally shouldn't exist. It started as a doodle by character designer Natasha Allegri. It became a subplot about an old man writing bad romance novels. And then, 10 years later,
It became a gritty TV-MA exploration of depression and multiversal canon. The show looked at its own throwaway gag and said, what if this is the most important thing in the universe? The series reveals that Fiona and Cake aren't just stories, they are a universe trapped inside the Ice King's head. A lost world kept in stasis. But the real kicker, it's a show for us. The original Adventure Time grew up with its audience, but Fiona and Cake meets us where we are now. In our 20s and 30s, tired, broke, and wondering why magic doesn't solve our problems anymore. Fiona isn't an adventurer. She's a gig worker with a cat. Simon isn't a wizard. He's a sad man in a suit trying to understand the 20th century. It takes the lost episodes concept to its metaphysical limit. It argues that every idea, every deleted scene, and every fanfiction exists somewhere. If you can imagine it, it's real. It validates every kid who ever wrote a story about their favourite characters. It says, your stories matter. They have weight. They can literally save the multiverse. It is a love letter to the very concept of creativity, and it proves that the only difference between canon and fanfiction is who holds the pen. Plus, seeing a gender-swapped lumpy space prince who sounds exactly the same but has a moustache, that is high art. We have talked about lost episodes, lost timelines, and lost memories. But eventually, all roads lead to the thing that does the losing. Golb. For years, Golb was the ultimate playground rumour. He appeared for exactly 3 seconds in the episode Puhoi, floating in the void as Finn died. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just existed. A giant red geometrical nightmare baby sitting at the end of the universe. Fans spent 5 seasons asking, who is that? The answer turned out to be the most terrifying lore drop of all. He isn't a who. He is a what. The Lich, the most evil being in existence, calls himself the last scholar of Golb. Think about that. The Lich is just a student. Golb is the university. Golb represents discord, chaos, but more specifically he represents entropy. He is the force that ensures nothing lasts forever. He is the reason timelines get erased. He is the reason Finn forgot the Pillow World. He is the cosmic shredder that eats the lost episodes. In the finale, the heroes don't defeat him by punching him harder. You can't punch a concept. They defeat him with harmony, with music. It is the perfect ending to a show about growing up. You realise that you can't kill chaos. You can't stop the world from changing or ending. You can't stop people from leaving. Golb is inevitable. But you can sing while the world ends. You can create a moment of harmony in the face of absolute discord. Betty understands this. She doesn't destroy Golb. She merges with him. She sacrifices herself to become the chaos so that Simon can live. It is the ultimate act of love, taking the unknown and making it personal. Golb teaches us that the lost parts of our lives aren't gone because of malice. They are gone because that is the nature of things. The universe is a messy, chaotic place that eventually digests everything. But hey, at least he has tiny little floating blocks around his head. That's a bold fashion choice for a primordial deity. In most mythologies, gods are distant. They are terrifying. They speak in riddles and live on top of mountains where the air is too thin for mortals to breathe. In Adventure Time, the gods hang out in a jacuzzi and play card wars. Let's talk about the Cosmic Owl. When he first appeared in Season 1, he was the ultimate Deus Ex Machina. He was the golden entity that showed up in your dreams to deliver a prophecy. If you saw the Cosmic Owl, it meant your dream was real. It meant fate was knocking on your skull. He was mysterious, silent, and terrifyingly powerful. But then, the show did what it does best. It pulled back the curtain and showed us the guy running the projector. As the seasons went on, we learned the truth. The Cosmic Owl isn't a mysterious deity. He's a lonely, socially anxious guy who hates his job. In the episode Hoots, we see his life behind the scenes, and it is depressingly mundane. He spends his nights flying around Ooo, checking a list, and showing up in people's dreams like a disgruntled Uber Eats driver, delivering prophecies nobody ordered. He is bored, he is lonely, and more than anything, he is obsessed with his own image. We see him in Prismo's time room, the Cosmic VIP Lounge, complaining about his relationships. He worries about whether people think he's cool. He checks his reflection in the mirror. He is desperate for connection.
This is a brilliant deconstruction of the god trope. Usually cosmic entities are above human emotion, but in Ooo, being a cosmic entity just means you have a really high-pressure job and no friends. It turns out, heavy lies the head that wears the crown also applies to the bird that haunts your nightmares. The tragedy of the cosmic owl is that his loneliness makes him vulnerable, and that vulnerability almost destroys the world. In Hoots, he gets manipulated by the Gunther version of Orgalorg simply because he thinks the penguin is a pretty bird. He's so starved for affection, so desperate for a girlfriend, that he accidentally helps an ancient space demon hatch a plan to consume a comet. He invites the villain into the dream realm not out of malice, but because he wanted to impress a girl. It is a hilarious and terrifying realization. The fate of the universe doesn't hinge on a great battle between good and evil. It hinges on whether or not the cosmic entities are feeling lonely on a Friday night. The cosmic owl teaches us that even the beings who control reality are just trying to get through the work week. They have insecurities, they have crushes, they make mistakes, and honestly, that is way scarier than an evil god. An evil god has a plan, a lonely god just has a lot of free time and poor judgment. If the cosmic owl is the anxious celebrity trying too hard to be cool, Prismo is the guy who is effortlessly cool because he literally doesn't have a third dimension to worry about. Prismo is the wishmaster. He lives in the time room, a yellow cube outside of existence. He can grant you anything, a sandwich, a new timeline, the extinction of all life, you name it. But unlike most genies in fiction who are tricky, malicious, or bound by rules, Prismo is just a dude. He's a chill, pink shadow on the wall who wants to hang out, eat homemade pickles, and talk about his screenplay. He is the ultimate roommate god. He doesn't want worship. He just wants company. But beneath the casual vibes and the hot tubs, Prismo represents one of the darkest existential concepts in the entire show. We find out that Prismo isn't real in the traditional sense. He is the dream of an old man sleeping in a bed hidden behind the wall of the time room. This old man has been asleep for an eternity. And Prismo is his avatar. He is the lucid dream that gained sentience. Think about the fragility of that existence. Prismo is all-powerful. He can rewrite history with a snap of his two-dimensional fingers. But his entire life, his personality, his friendships, his pickles, hangs by a single terrifying thread. If the old man wakes up, Prismo dies. It is a literal interpretation of the life is a dream philosophy. But usually, when a story pulls the "it was all a dream" card, it's a cheap trick to reset the plot. Adventure Time uses it to establish a permanent state of anxiety. In the episode Wake Up, the Lich kills the old man, and instantly Prismo flickers and vanishes. It's brutal. It's sudden. It reminds us that our Wishmaster was never a god. He was just a very vivid thought. But the show goes deeper. It asks, if you are just a dream, but you have friends who love you, does it matter if you aren't real? Prismo eventually comes back through a complicated time loop plan involving Jake that I still need a whiteboard to explain. But the point stands. He chooses to exist in this fragile state because he loves his friends. He creates his own purpose in a void. He rejects the cosmic grandeur of his position to focus on the small things, like perfecting a pickle brine. Prismo teaches us that even if your existence is temporary, and even if you're just a shadow on a wall, you can still be the most solid person in the room. Just maybe don't make too much noise near the sleeping old man. In the early days of Adventure Time, the stakes were delightfully low. The biggest threat was usually a socially awkward heart, and the biggest treasure was a book, the Enchiridion, the hero's handbook. When Finn first finds it in Season 1, it is essentially a Boy Scout manual written by a wizard who had too much time on his hands. It has chapters on how to kiss princesses, a skill Finn failed to master for several years, and how to knot a tie. It was a gag prop, a MacGuffin designed to give Finn a physical representation of his desire to be a good boy. But if you track the Enchiridion across the series, you are watching a masterclass in retconning. Somewhere around Season 4, the writers looked at this dusty old book and said, "You know what would be cool? If this book wasn't just a manual, what if it was a bomb?" Suddenly, the Enchiridion stopped being a guide to chivalry and started being the key to the multiverse. We learned that if you put the gems of the princesses into the cover, you don't get a special chapter on manners, you get a portal to the time room, you get the ability to rip holes in the fabric of reality. The Lich spent entire seasons hunting this thing, Not because he wanted to learn how to be a better hero, but because he knew it was the launch codes for the apocalypse. This shift is fascinating because it mirrors Finn's own growth. When he was a kid, he thought being a hero was about following rules written in a book. Do X, get Y. Save princess, get hug. It was simple. It was a manual. But as he grew up, he realised that the rules were dangerous. The book wasn't a guide, it was a weapon. And to save the world, he didn't need to read it. He needed to destroy it. In the episode The Lich, Finn literally breaks the Enchiridion on his knee. He snaps the symbol of his childhood heroism in half to stop the villain. It is a powerful metaphor for maturity. You can't live your life by a handbook forever. Eventually, you have to throw the manual away, trust your gut, and realise that the rules you worshipped as a kid might actually be the very thing holding the door open for the monsters. Plus, let's be honest, a book that opens portals to alternate dimensions is way cooler than one that teaches you table manners. Finn the human has a lot of baggage. He has daddy issues, mummy issues, and girlfriend issues. But the heaviest baggage he carries isn't even his. It belongs to a girl named Shoko. For the first few seasons, Finn's missing arm in alternate realities, and his eventual loss of it in the main timeline, felt like foreshadowing. It was a motif, a quirk of the multiverse. But in the episode The Vault, we realised it wasn't foreshadowing. It was a memory. Shoko is Finn's past life. And unlike Finn, she wasn't a hero. She was a mercenary. She was a thief. She was a one-armed girl working for a crime syndicate who died alone in the mud, betrayed by her own parents, after stealing an amulet from Princess Bubblegum. It is arguably the bleakest backstory given to any protagonist in cartoon history. When Shoko dies, she falls into the toxic river under the Candy Kingdom. Her body rots there, and centuries later, Finn is born. This recontextualizes everything about Finn's character. Why is Finn so desperate to be a good boy? Why is he so fiercely loyal to Princess Bubblegum, even when she's being objectively terrible? Why does he have an innate fear of the ocean? It's not just personality, it's penance. Finn isn't just a hero because he thinks it's cool. He is a hero because his soul is trying to apologise. He's spending this lifetime fixing the mistakes of the last one. Shoko betrayed PB. Finn serves her. Shoko was a thief. Finn gives everything away. Shoko died unloved. Finn loves everyone, sometimes to a fault. The Vault transforms the show from a simple adventure into a story about generational trauma and reincarnation. It suggests that we're all just carrying the ghosts of who we used to be. And the most heartbreaking part. When Finn finally accesses this memory, he doesn't freak out. He doesn't have an identity crisis. He just sighs. He understands. He realises that the ghost haunting the treehouse wasn't a monster. It was just Shoko, waiting for him to remember her so she could finally rest. It's a profound lesson on self-forgiveness. Sometimes the demons haunting you aren't external. They are just the parts of yourself you haven't made peace with yet, and once you do, you don't have to be afraid of the dark anymore. You can just hand the amulet back, say, "I'm sorry," and move on. In the Land of Ooo, there are demons, liches, and cosmic horrors, and then there is a horse on a beach ball. His name is James Baxter. He rolls into town, neighs his own name, makes everyone smile, and then rolls away. It is arguably the most absurd character concept in the entire show, but if you know the history of animation, you know that this isn't just a random gag. It is a love letter. James Baxter is named after, and voiced by, James Baxter, one of the greatest animators alive. We are talking about the guy who animated Belle in Beauty and the Beast, Rafiki in The Lion King, and Moses in The Prince of Egypt. If you watch the episode closely, you'll notice something strange. When James Baxter the horse appears, the frame rate changes. The animation becomes fluid, bouncy, and hyper-smooth. It stands out against the purposely rough, hand-drawn style of the rest of the show. That's because James Baxter, the human, actually animated James Baxter, the horse. It is a meta-joke on a level that few shows would dare to attempt. But beneath the inside baseball reference for animation nerds, this episode carries a profound message about the nature of art. Finn and Jake see the horse making people happy, and they decide they want to do it too. They try to copy him, they analyse his movements, they try to break down the science of being funny, and they fail, miserably.
They fail because they are trying to replicate the mechanics of joy without the soul of it. The episode argues that true art, whether it's a beautifully animated horse or a dumb joke you tell your friend, can't be engineered. It has to be sincere. James Baxter doesn't make people happy because he balances on a ball. He makes them happy because he loves balancing on that ball. It is a defense of silly art. In a series that deals with war and apocalypse, James Baxter is a reminder that you don't always need to be deep to be important. You don't always need to defeat a villain to be a hero. Sometimes, the most heroic thing you can do is just be a horse on a beach ball. It tells us that making someone smile for 5 seconds is a valid life purpose, and in a world full of gloom, pure, unadulterated joy is the most rebellious act of all. This cosmic dance of bursting decadence and withheld permissions twists all our arms collectively. But if sweetness can win, and it can, then I'll still be here tomorrow to high-five you yesterday, my friend. Peace. I want you to read that sentence again. That isn't a quote from a philosophical treatise. It isn't a line from a psychedelic rock opera. It is a monologue delivered by a senile gingerbread man in an episode about delivering pastries. We have to talk about the royal tart toter. He appears in the Season 2 episode The Other Tarts. On paper, he is a throwaway character, an old crumbling candy person whose only job is to carry tarts for the princess. He seems broken. He mumbles. He stares into the middle distance. But then he opens his mouth and the universe falls out. This monologue is the moment Adventure Time tipped its hand. Before this, we thought the random dialogue was just so-random internet humour. But the tart toter proved that the writers weren't just throwing darts at a dictionary. They were writing poetry. High-five you yesterday. Think about the implications of that. It suggests a non-linear perception of time. It suggests that this crumbling old man isn't just senile. He's experiencing reality all at once. He's untethered from the chronological flow that the rest of us are stuck in. The cosmic dance of bursting decadence perfectly describes the post-apocalyptic nature of a world born from a burst of nuclear fire now living in a state of candy-coloured decay. This moment is the Rosetta Stone for understanding the dialogue of the show. It teaches us that in Ooo, madness isn't always a defect. Sometimes it's a higher frequency of understanding. The characters who seem the most crazy, Ice King, Tart Toter, Magic Man, are often the ones who are closest to the terrifying truth of their reality. They aren't speaking nonsense. They are speaking a language we are too sane to understand. The Tart Toter disappeared after his brief moment of glory, presumably to continue his cosmic dance elsewhere. But he left us with a lingering question. Are these characters actually insane? Or are they just the only ones who can see the strings? Either way, if sweetness can win, I hope he gets his high five. In a world full of magic dogs and rainbow unicorns, it is easy to forget the little guys, the citizens, the background extras who just want to pay their taxes and go home. Enter Root Beer Guy. He is the most painfully normal character in the history of Ooo. He has a desk job, he has a wife, he has a midlife crisis. His self-titled episode, Root Beer Guy, is a sudden genre shift. It isn't a fantasy adventure, it is a film noir. It has the shadows, the jazz saxophone, the voiceover monologue about a city that never sleeps. Root Beer Guy witnesses a crime, Finn and Jake kidnapping Princess Bubblegum as a prank, but no one believes him. His boss yells at him. His wife tells him to stop writing his mystery novels and go to sleep. For 10 minutes, we are trapped in the suffocating reality of being a sane person in an insane world. But the tragedy of Root Beer Guy isn't that he was ignored. It's that he was right, and it got him killed. Later in the series, during the resurrection of Maya the Sky Witch, Root Beer Guy steps up. He isn't a hero, he's a beverage. But he charges into battle to save his kingdom, and he dies. There is no magical resurrection. There is no last-minute save by Finn. He is crushed. The show eventually brings him back as Dirt Beer Guy, a zombie living in the soil. But the original man is gone. His marriage falls apart. His life is ruined. Root Beer Guy is the lost episode of The Everyman. He represents the collateral damage of a hero's journey. While Finn is off having fun adventures, normal people are getting their lives destroyed by the chaos. It is a harsh, brutal reminder that not everyone gets plot armor. Some people are just NPCs in someone else's RPG, but his sacrifice matters. It proves that you don't need a magic sword to be brave. Sometimes bravery is just a guy in a tie standing up to a monster because it's the right thing to do. Rest in peace, root beer guy. You were too carbonated for this world. If you grew up watching Adventure Time, you probably thought Princess Bubblegum was the benevolent ruler of a sugar-coated utopia. She wears pink, she does science, she gives out quests. But if you watched closely, you realise something terrifying. Princess Bubblegum is not a Disney princess. She is a dictator. An Exhibit A of her crimes against sentient life is a robot named Rattleballs. In the episode named after him, we meet Rattleballs living in a junkyard. He is an elite swordsman. He is fast, precise, and deadly. Finn, naturally, wants to be his student. But then we learn his history. Rattleballs wasn't a one-off experiment. He was part of an entire police force created by Bubblegum to protect the kingdom. They were efficient. Too efficient. They started solving problems with extreme prejudice. So what did PB do? Did she reprogram them? Did she teach them ethics? No. She led them into a junkyard, lined them up, and executed them firing squad style. Rattleballs only survived because he hid in the trash. This is the dark PB arc distilled into a single horrific backstory. It forces us to look at the Candy Kingdom differently. It isn't a democracy. It is a police state built on the bones of the protectors who became inconvenient. The banana guards, the goofy, incompetent police force we see for most of the show, aren't stupid by accident. They are stupid by design. Bubblegum realised that competent soldiers were a threat to her power, so she replaced them with idiots she could control. It is a chilling commentary on authoritarianism. The ruler destroys the elite warriors not because they failed, but because they succeeded too well. When Finn finds out, he doesn't overthrow PB. He negotiates. He begs her not to kill Rattleballs, and she agrees, on the condition that Rattleballs pretends to be a knight who acts like a mindless drone. He has to lobotomize his own personality just to be allowed to exist. This section of the law is crucial because it destroys the binary of good versus evil. PB is one of the good guys, but she has a body count. She has a graveyard of scrapped ideas that she personally buried. It teaches us a hard lesson. Sometimes the person keeping you safe is the same person holding the gun. If Rattleballs was a secret buried in a junkyard, Neddy is a secret buried in the basement. And this one is family. For years we assumed Princess Bubblegum was a lone genius who built her kingdom from scratch. Then, in Season 7, we met her brother. Neddy is a dragon. But he isn't a cool, fire-breathing fantasy dragon. He's a soft, wet, terrified creature who looks like a nervous system stripped of its skin. When Bubblegum and Neddy were born from the Mother Gum, they reacted to the world in opposite ways. Bubblegum wanted to build. Neddy wanted to hide. He was so overwhelmed by the sharpness of existence that he retreated. He found a dark cave, curled into a ball, and suckled on the roots of a tree, and that is where he stayed, for 800 years. But here is where it gets uncomfortable. When Neddy is anxious, he sweats a specific kind of juice. And that juice isn't just waste. It is the lifeblood of the Candy Kingdom. It is the primary ingredient Bubblegum uses to create life. So what does the benevolent princess do? Does she help him? Does she find him a therapist? No. She keeps him in the dungeon, hooked up to machines that harvest his anxiety sweat to power her civilization. It brings a whole new meaning to the phrase, "the ends justify the means." The entire Candy Kingdom, every happy citizen, every bright colour, every sweet moment, is literally fueled by the eternal terror of a mentally ill dragon chained in the dark. It is a disturbing metaphor for resource extraction. It suggests that every utopia has a cost. Every shining city is built on the back of something suffering in the dirt. And the worst part? Bubblegum loves him. She genuinely protects him. She visits him, but she also exploits him. This dynamic adds a layer of moral greyness to Bubblegum that makes her one of the most complex characters in fiction. She isn't evil, she is pragmatic to a fault. She will love you, protect you, and keep you safe, as long as you're useful to the infrastructure. So next time you see a cute candy person walking down the street, just remember, they are made of fear. We usually treat video game tie-ins like radioactive waste. They are usually rushed, broken, and have about as much soul as a spreadsheet. But Adventure Time is different, because Adventure Time has Adventure Time,
"Hey Ice King, why'd you steal our garbage?" Released on the Nintendo DS, this game is a lost episode you can play. And the reason it matters is simple. It was written by Pendleton Ward himself. Most tie-in games are written by a freelancer who skimmed a Wikipedia article. This game feels like it was written during a fever dream in the writer's room. The plot is in the title. The Ice King steals their garbage. Why? To build a garbage princess. It is peak Season 1 logic. But the brilliance is in how it treats the medium. The characters know they are in a video game. They lean on the fourth wall until it shatters. At one point, the Ice King screams at the player for judging him. At another, the game explicitly references the fact that Finn and Jake are just sprites moving on a screen. It is canon-adjacent chaos. It takes the surreal humour of the show, the non-sequiturs, the anti-jokes, the awkward silences, and translates them perfectly into text boxes. It proves that the voice of Ooo isn't dependent on animation. It's a vibe. It's a specific frequency of weirdness that survives even when crushed down into 16-bit pixels. And then there is the ending. Spoilers for a decade-old DS game. The garbage princess comes to life, rejects the Ice King, and then falls apart because she's made of banana peels and old soup. It is hilarious, gross, and surprisingly sad. It captures the core thesis of the Ice King. He tries so hard to construct happiness out of refuse that he misses the fact that he's just holding a bag of trash. So if you skipped the games because you thought they were just cash grabs, go back. You missed out on the only timeline where you can legally punch a penguin while it critiques your fighting style. You know that one guy at the party who thinks it's funny to break things? That's Magic Man. For the first 4 seasons, he was the show's designated troll. He turned birds inside out. He turned Finn into a giant foot. He gave people nightmares just for the lulz. He was the agent of pure, unadulterated chaos. We laughed at him because he was random. We hated him because he was a jerk. But then the show decided to ruin our fun by giving him a backstory. In the episode You Forgot Your Floaties, we finally look inside Magic Man's head. And it isn't a funhouse, it's a graveyard. We learn that Magic Man wasn't always a jerk. He was a scientist. He was a husband. He had a wife named Margles whom he loved more than anything in the multiverse. And then Golb took her. Golb didn't just kill her, he consumed her. He erased her from existence so thoroughly that even Prismo, the Wishmaster himself, couldn't bring her back. Magic Man went to the highest authority in the cosmos to save his wife, and the universe looked at him and said, "She's gone, deal with it." That is the moment he snapped. We realize that his randomness isn't a personality quirk, it is a coping mechanism. Magic Man looked at a universe that was cruel enough to erase love, and he decided that if the universe doesn't make sense, he shouldn't either. He turns people into soup and messes with time because he is desperately trying to prove that nothing matters. Because if nothing matters, then losing Margles doesn't hurt as much. It is a devastating look at grief. It suggests that the most annoying, destructive people in our lives might just be the ones who are hurting the most. Magic Man isn't screaming wazoo because he's happy. He's screaming it to drown out the silence where his wife used to be. Suddenly turning a bird inside out doesn't look like a prank. It looks like a man trying to show the world exactly how he feels on the inside. In most stories, a hero is born, they save the world, and they die. It's a straight line. Adventure Time looked at that line, bent it into a circle, and set it on fire. Let's talk about the Catalyst Comet. Every 1,000 years, a comet strikes the Earth. It brings change. It brings an agent of upheaval. For a long time, we thought this was just a cool bit of background lore to explain why the world is so weird. But in Season 6, we learned the truth. Finn isn't just a boy who found a sword. Finn is the comet. Or at least he used to be. The lore reveals that Finn's soul is ancient. Before he was a human, he was a butterfly. Before that, he was a mysterious thing. And before that, he was a blue comet that slammed into the planet eons ago. This revelation changes the entire scope of the show. It means Finn isn't fighting the Lich by accident. He is fighting him because they are cosmic siblings. The Lich was the green comet, the one that killed the dinosaurs, or at least tried to, and brought the age of monsters. Finn is the blue comet, the one that brings life and heroism. They are the two opposing forces of the universe locked in an eternal wrestling match. One tries to extinguish the light, the other tries to punch the darkness in the face.
This section of the lore introduces the concept of the Great Wheel. History in Ooo isn't linear, it's cyclical. Civilizations rise, a comet hits, everything dies, and it starts over. The Mushroom War wasn't the first apocalypse, and the 1,000+ future proves it won't be the last. It's a terrifying thought. It implies that nothing we do matters because the wheel will just crush it anyway. But then, Finn does something unexpected. In the episode The Comet, he meets his creator, or perhaps his previous self, in the void of space. The purple comet offers him a choice. He can ascend. He can leave the painful, messy, cyclical world behind and become a god. He can escape the wheel, and Finn says no. He looks at cosmic perfection and says, "I think I've put a lot of work into this meat reality. I'd like to see it through." This is the thesis statement of the entire show. Finn acknowledges that life is a cycle of pain and rebirth. He knows he's just a speck of dust on a rock hurtling through space, but he chooses to stay. He chooses the smell of old dog, the taste of meatloaf, and the pain of heartbreak over the perfection of the void. The comet teaches us that while we might be trapped in a cycle, we still have the freedom to enjoy the ride. The world will end again, the comet will return, but until then, there are still plenty of monsters to fight. For 6 seasons, Gunter was the punchline. He was the cute, bottle-smashing penguin who served as the Ice King's roommate, pet, and occasional hostage. We laughed when Ice King scolded him. Wenk. We laughed when he stole jewellery. Wenk. We laughed when he laid an egg. Wenk. But if you were paying very close attention, the show was warning us the whole time. Remember when Marceline's dad, the Lord of Evil, the ruler of the Nightosphere, met Gunter? He didn't pet him. He didn't call him cute. He said, "Of all the monsters I've met, you are by far the most evil thing I've encountered." We thought it was a joke. A gag about how cats, or penguins, are jerks. It wasn't a joke. It was a threat assessment. In Season 6, the mask fell off. Gunter isn't a penguin. He is Orgolorg, a primordial cosmic entity who existed before time, a breaker of worlds, who wanted to absorb a catalyst comet and rule the solar system. He was only banished to Earth and compressed into the form of a penguin by the gravity of the planet. This reveal is the ultimate recontextualization. Go back and watch Season 1. Every time the Ice King sprays Gunter with a water bottle for breaking a vase, he is spraying a water bottle at a Lovecraftian god. Every time Gunter slaps the Ice King, that isn't a pet being naughty. That is an ancient deity expressing his frustration at being trapped in a flightless, chubby body. The Orgolorg reveal transforms the Ice King from a villain into an accidental jailer. Without realizing it, Simon Petrikov has been keeping the universe safe for centuries simply by distracting the destroyer of worlds with drum sets and bad fan fiction. It is the funniest cosmic horror story ever told. It suggests that the line between cute mascot and eldritch abomination is terrifyingly thin. So, the next time you see a cute animal doing something destructive, don't laugh. It might just be a dark god waiting for the gravity to wear off. Wenk, indeed. If you were on the internet in 2014, you remember the rage. Finn had finally lost his arm. It was the moment the entire series had been building toward. We saw the foreshadowing in the Pillow World, in the alternate realities, in his past lives. It felt permanent. It felt like the show had finally crossed a line of no return. And then, 6 episodes later, he got it back. In the episode Breezy, a bee falls in love with the flower growing out of Finn's stump. They have a weird spiritual moment and poof, the arm grows back. Fans were furious. They called it a cop-out. They said the show was afraid of consequences. They said it ruined the character arc. But if you think Breezy is a cop-out, you are missing the point of the episode. Breezy isn't an adventure story. It is a depression story. Finn spends the entire episode trying to feel something. He goes on a kissing spree across Ooo, dating princesses he doesn't care about, trying to jumpstart his heart after his breakup with Flame Princess, and the trauma of meeting his dad. He is numb. He is acting out. He is trying to replace the missing piece of his soul with shallow validation. The return of the arm isn't a reward for heroism. It is a symbol of a rebound. When the arm grows back, it has a thorn in the palm. It isn't the same arm. It looks like it, but it's different. It's organic, but it's alien. The show is telling us that healing doesn't mean you go back to exactly who you were before the trauma. You might look the same on the outside, but underneath you are made of something else now. you're made of the experience. Finn didn't cheat his way out of amputation. He traded physical loss for emotional scarring. And let's be honest, the fact that his arm grew back because of a bee who was attracted to his flower is the kind of uncomfortable biological weirdness that only Adventure Time can pull off. It wasn't a reset button, it was a lesson. You can get yourself back together, but you're always going to have a thorn in your palm to remind you of where you've been. We generally assume that when a villain is defeated, they are gone. When the Lich was turned into a giant, adorable baby named Sweet Pea, we breathed a sigh of relief. The monster was pacified. The nightmare was over. But Adventure Time is a show that pays attention to physics. And in physics, matter cannot be destroyed. It can only change location. In the episode Crossover, Prismo helps Finn and Jake clean up a messy alternate timeline. In the chaos of the climax, the Lich, the one from the Farmworld timeline, is defeated. His body is destroyed, but watch closely. As the portal closes, his severed hand falls through. It falls into the multiverse. This isn't just a gross visual gag. This is a seeding of infinite horror. That hand didn't just land in one place. The implication of the multiverse theory in Ooo is that the Lich's essence was scattered. It suggests that every single timeline now has a piece of the Lich in it. We see this pay off in Fiona and Cake, where we visit a universe where the Lich actually won. A universe of silence and dust. But the severed hand represents something more terrifying than a single victory. It represents the idea that evil is a constant. You can change the timeline, you can wish for a new reality, you can turn the villain into a baby, but there is always a piece left over. There is always a hand twitching in the dark, waiting to pull itself back together. This section of the lore transforms the Lich from a character into a law of nature. He is the gravitational pull of death. He is the mold that grows in the corner of every reality, no matter how much bleach you pour on it. It's a grim realization. You can never truly kill the Lich. You can only chop him up into smaller pieces and hope that the next dimension he lands in has a hero ready to deal with him. So if you ever feel a cold draft in your room, check under the bed. It might just be a skeletal hand from another dimension, looking for the rest of its body. We talk a lot about the tragedy of Simon Petrikov, the nice man who put on a crown to save a child and lost his mind in the process. We pity him, we love him, but we need to talk about the woman who loved him back. Because if Simon is a tragedy, Betty Groff is a cautionary tale. When Betty first jumped through time in the episode Betty, it felt like a triumph. She was the hero coming to save her prince. She was the solution to the equation. She was going to find a cure for the crown. But over the next few seasons, we watched something terrifying happen. We watched love curdle into obsession. Betty didn't just want to save Simon. She wanted to rewrite the fundamental laws of the universe to do it. She studied magic. She went mad. She eventually took Magic Man's powers and became Magic Woman. She became the very thing she was fighting against, insane and dangerous. The show uses Betty to ask a brutal question. At what point does saving someone become selfish? Betty tries everything. She manipulates the heroes. She kidnaps people. She eventually summons Golb, the literal embodiment of chaos, risking the destruction of all existence just to get her boyfriend back. She's willing to burn the world down if it means she can sit in the ashes with Simon. It is romantic, sure, in a dark, twisted way, but it is also terrifying. Her arc forces us to confront the thin line between devotion and addiction. Betty defines her entire existence by Simon. She has no life, no hobbies, no identity outside of the woman who saves Simon, and in the end, she doesn't get the happy ending she fought for. She doesn't get to live with him in a cottage. She merges with Golb to save him. She sacrifices her humanity to become an eternal cosmic force, ensuring Simon can live as a normal man but forever out of her reach. It is the ultimate sacrifice, but it carries a bitter lesson. Betty teaches us that you can't fix people. You can love them, you can support them, but you cannot tear apart the fabric of reality to mould them back into who they used to be. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let go. But Betty held on so tight she became the void itself. We usually think of villains as people with grand, evil plans. They want to conquer, they want to destroy, they want to watch the world burn. But Patience St. Pym just wants the world to chill out. Patience is the ice elemental from the era before the Mushroom War. She was a woman living in our modern world who saw the apocalypse coming and decided, you know what, I'm opting out. She froze herself in a block of ice to skip the end of the world. She woke up 1,000 years later in the Land of Ooo, and her reaction to this magical, vibrant, post-apocalyptic wonderland? She found it annoying. Patience represents a very specific, very modern kind of evil. Apathy. She doesn't hate Ooo, she just doesn't respect it. She treats the current reality like a TV show that has gone downhill in the later seasons. She's obsessed with the way things used to be. She wants to awaken the other elementals, not to start a war, but to fix the world. To make it orderly. To make it match the grid in her head. She is the ultimate personification of toxic nostalgia. She freezes the world not out of malice, but because she refuses to engage with the chaos of the present. She is the person at the party who stands in the corner scrolling on their phone because the music isn't exactly the genre they like. Her arc is a meta-commentary on the viewers, or people in general, who refuse to grow. She froze herself to survive, sure, but in doing so she missed the entire point of living. While she was asleep, the world ended, grew back, and created something beautiful. And when she finally woke up, she tried to force this new world to fit into her old boxes. In the end, her apathy consumes her. She freezes herself again, deciding to wait for a future that suits her better. Patience teaches us that if you wait for the perfect moment to start living, or if you wait for the world to stop being messy before you engage with it, you are going to spend your eternity in a block of ice. Life is chaos. The world is loud, weird, and often annoying, but freezing yourself out of it isn't a strategy. It's just a really cold way to die. We need to talk about the boy in the grass. Fern is not a villain, he's not a monster, he is Finn. But he is Finn, wrong. His existence is a walking nightmare of identity. He was created when the grass sword merged with the Finn sword, a sword that literally contained a past version of Finn. So biologically and spiritually, Fern is Finn. He has his memories. He has his desire to be a hero. He remembers growing up in the treehouse, but when he looks in the mirror, he sees a monster made of leaves. And when he looks at the treehouse, he sees someone else living his life. Fern is the ultimate embodiment of imposter syndrome. Imagine waking up one day to find that a better version of you is living your life, dating your girlfriend, and high-fiving your brother, and everyone looks at you with pity. They call you Fern. They tell you to sleep in the yard. His arc is a psychological horror story about being the backup copy. He desperately tries to be the hero. He tries to protect Ooo, but everything he does feels hollow because he knows he is just an echo. The world doesn't need two Finns. This drives him insane. The Green Knight persona he adopts isn't an act of malice. It's a desperate attempt to differentiate himself. If he can't be the hero, he'll be the nemesis. At least then, he has a purpose. At least then, he is the main character of something. His death in the finale is devastating, not because he was evil, but because he was just a confused kid who wanted to go home. When he disintegrates, leaving behind a seed that eventually grows into the new treehouse in the future, it is a bittersweet victory. He finally found his place. He became the shelter. He became the home he was locked out of. Fern teaches us a brutal lesson about self-worth. You cannot build your identity by trying to be someone else, even if that someone else is technically you. You have to find your own shape, even if that shape is a weird, grassy demon guy. For the first season, we accepted the Land of Ooo at face value. It was a magical land, a Narnia. A Middle-earth. It was a fantasy map drawn by a child. But then we saw the globe. In a few brief shots from space, we saw the planet Earth. And it wasn't a perfect blue marble. It had a massive continent-sized chunk blown out of it. This was the smoking gun. For years, fans whispered about the Mushroom War. The characters referenced it vaguely as the event that ended the previous era. But as the show went on, the pieces clicked into place, and the picture they formed was terrifying. The mushroom didn't refer to magical toadstools, it referred to mushroom clouds. Adventure Time isn't a fantasy. It is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi horror story set after a nuclear holocaust that nearly cracked the planet in half. Once you realise this, you can't unsee it. The Lich's Well, It's a subway station filled with toxic waste. The river of junk. It's a pile of cars and televisions from the 21st century. The businessmen, they were corporate executives frozen in cryostasis to escape the bombs. The mutants, that's everyone. The candy people, the slime people, the rainicorns, they are all the biological descendants of the radioactive soup left behind by humanity's extinction. This section of the lore is the lost history of our own future. The brilliance of Adventure Time is that it takes the bleakest possible setting, nuclear winter, and paints it pink. It explores the idea that life finds a way. Even if humanity destroys itself, something else will grow in the crater. It forces us to ask, is paradise or a graveyard? The answer is yes, it's both. It is a garden growing on a grave. And honestly, there is something strangely comforting about that. We tend to think that if humanity dies, the world ends. Adventure Time argues that the world will be just fine without us. It will just be a lot weirder, a lot stickier, and ruled by a piece of gum with a god complex. The Mushroom War teaches us that the end of the world isn't the end of the story. It's just the start of the next season. If you ask a child where candy comes from, they might say a factory. If you ask an Adventure Time fan, they will look you in the eye and say, a sentient radioactive pink hive mind soup found in a gutter. Let's talk about the mother gum. For a long time, we assumed Princess Bubblegum was just a person. A candy person, sure, but an individual. But the episode Bonnie and Neddy peeled back the wrapper and showed us something Cronenbergian. Bubblegum wasn't born. She didn't have parents. She coalesced. She and her brother Neddy dropped out of a massive sentient blob of gum that was mutated by the fallout of the Mushroom War. This mother gum is a collective consciousness. It is a biological soup of genetic data and sugar. This recontextualizes the entire candy kingdom. Princess Bubblegum isn't just a ruler, she's a fragment of a hive mind trying to simulate individuality. When she creates the candy people, she isn't just baking them. She's taking pieces of her own biological mass, mixing it with science, and giving it life. She is literally populating a kingdom with pieces of herself. It explains her obsession with control. It explains why she has cameras everywhere. It explains why she feels entitled to meddle in the lives of her citizens. In her mind, they aren't really people. They are extensions of her own body. This is body horror disguised as sweetness. The candy people are cute, yes, but they are also tragic. They are simple-minded because Bubblegum made them that way. She engineered them to be happy, dumb, and dependent, because the last time she tried to make smart family members, Gumbald and the rest, they tried to lobotomize her. The Mother Gum lore teaches us that the Candy Kingdom isn't a democracy. It is a single organism pretending to be a society. And at the centre of it is Bonnie, a lonely mutation who built an entire civilization just so she wouldn't have to be the only thinking thing in the pink soup. It's kind of beautiful. And also deeply, deeply gross. We need to talk about the shirt. You know the one. The rock shirt that smelled like bubble gum. For the first 2 seasons, Marceline the Vampire Queen and Princess Bubblegum were just rivals. One was chaotic, the other was lawful. One liked red, the other liked pink. It was a classic odd couple dynamic. But then, the episode What Was Missing aired, and the internet exploded. Marceline sang I'm Just Your Problem. It wasn't a song about a rival. It was a song about a heartbreak. It was angry, it was messy, and it was deeply personal. And then, at the end of the episode, we found out Bubblegum kept Marceline's old t-shirt. She sniffed it. She slept in it. That was the moment the subtext became text. Bubblin is arguably the most important lost history in the show because, for years, we had to piece it together like detectives. The show never gave us a flashback episode of them dating. Instead, it gave us the wreckage. We saw the animosity. We saw the awkwardness. We saw 2 immortals who clearly had hundreds of years of shared trauma. The brilliance of this relationship is that it happened in the negative space. The writers didn't spoon-feed us the romance. They made us earn it. They made us watch them grow back together. The episode Varmints is the turning point. It isn't a romantic date. It's 2 exes hunting monsters in a pumpkin patch, realizing that they have both changed. Marceline isn't a punk kid anymore. She's tired. Bubblegum isn't a cold dictator anymore. She's lonely. They apologize. Not for a specific fight, but for centuries of drifting apart. When they finally kiss in the series finale, it doesn't feel like fan service. It feels like the closing of a wound. It feels inevitable. And thanks to the Distant Lands special Obsidian, we finally got to see what came after. We saw the domesticity. We saw them living together, arguing about furniture, and being soft. Bublin proves that the most powerful storytelling technique is patience. By making us wait 10 years for the kiss, the show made us feel the weight of the 1,000 years it took them to get there. They aren't just a cute couple. They are the emotional backbone of the series. They are the proof that even if you are an immortal vampire and a gum monster, you can still find your way back to the person who kept your t-shirt. Every episode of Adventure Time starts with a flash, a title card. A single image that stays on screen for maybe 5 seconds. Most of us ignored them. We used that time to check our phones or grab a snack before the theme song ended. But if you ignored the title cards, you ignored the map. These weren't just thumbnails. They were hand-painted masterpieces, often created by artists like Phil Rinder and Nick Jennings. And they weren't just decorative. They were tonal warnings. The title cards are the lost art of the show, because they often depict scenes that never actually happen in the episode. They are metaphorical. They show us the feeling of the story rather than the plot. Take the title card for The Lich. It features a terrifying, hyper-realistic close-up of the Lich's face, rotting and ancient. It is far scarier than anything they could animate in the actual show. It sets a mood of absolute dread before a single line of dialogue is spoken. Or look at No One Can Hear You. It's a painting of a deer standing in a dark forest. It looks like a page from a horror storybook. It warns you. This isn't a comedy. Brace yourself. Sometimes they are straight-up lies. The title card for The Visitor shows Finn sitting peacefully by a fire with his dad. It promises a warm reunion. The episode itself? It's a brutal deconstruction of abandonment where his dad turns out to be a cosmic deadbeat. The title card is the hope. The episode is the reality. And then there are the clues. The title card for Mortal Folly has the Lich hidden in the smoke. The title card for King Worm has geometric patterns that hint at the dream logic before the episode even starts. These paintings are the covers of the books we're watching. They are a gallery of lost moments that exist only in paint, capturing a version of Ooo that is textured, static, and hauntingly beautiful. So, next time you rewatch the series, don't look away when the title pops up. Pause it. Look at the brushstrokes. Because sometimes the scariest part of the episode is the painting hanging on the front door. If you watch 283 episodes of a show, your brain gets used to the rules. Finn has noodle arms, Jake is yellow, the lines are thin and black. But every once in a while, Adventure Time decided to break its own reality. These are the guest animator episodes, and they are the lost episodes of the visual spectrum. The most famous one is Food Chain by Masaki Yuasa, which we've talked about. But that was just the tip of the experimental iceberg. Take A Glitch is a Glitch by David O'Reilly. This was the first time the show abandoned hand-drawn animation entirely. It looks like a corrupted Windows 95 screensaver having a panic attack. It is unsettling, gross, and mesmerizing. It suggests that if you look too closely at the fabric of... you don't see paper, you see pixels. Then there is Waterpark Prank by David Ferguson. Now, this episode is controversial. The animation is flat, crude, and often cited by fans as the ugliest episode in the series. But even in its awkwardness, it was a bold swing. It was the show saying, we don't care about being pretty. We care about being weird. And we can't forget Beyond the Grotto, where the characters stumble into a completely different dimension, animated by Lindsay and Alex Small-Butera. It feels like an Alice in Wonderland trip within an already trippy show. Why do these episodes matter? Because usually cartoons are fiercely protective of their brand. SpongeBob always looks like SpongeBob. The Simpsons always looks like The Simpsons. Consistency is key. Adventure Time didn't care about branding, it cared about art. By handing the keys of the kingdom to indie animators and saying, do whatever you want, the creators proved a massive hypothesis. The Land of Ooo isn't an art style, it's a concept. Finn is still Finn, whether he is drawn with delicate lines rendered in glitchy 3D or made of stop-motion clay. The soul of the show is so strong that it survives even when the body is completely replaced. These episodes are lost, in the sense that they don't fit the visual continuity. You can't edit clips from them into a normal montage without it looking jarring, but they are essential. They remind us that Adventure Time wasn't just a product to sell toys. It was an art gallery, and sometimes, in an art gallery, you turn a corner and find something that makes your eyes hurt. And that's the point. In the history of boys' cartoons, there is an unwritten rule. The hero can be mad, he can be determined, he can be stoic, but he cannot be soft. If he cries, it has to be a single manly tear rolling down his cheek while he salutes a fallen comrade. Adventure Time looked at that rule and threw it in the trash. Finn the human cries, a lot. He cries when he gets dumped. He cries when he is scared. He cries when he is frustrated. And he doesn't do the pretty movie cry. He does the ugly, snot-nosed, hyperventilating sob that makes you uncomfortable to watch. This is radical. Finn is the definition of a tough guy. He fights demons. He loses limbs. He jumps into the mouths of monsters. But the show never treats his emotions as a weakness that contradicts his strength. In fact, his emotional volatility is his superpower. Take the episode The Tower. Finn is angry at his dad. He is hurt. Instead of bottling it up like a traditional hero, he builds a literal tower into space to go punch God in the face. His feelings are so big they warp reality. Or look at his relationship with Jake. They tell each other, "I love you," constantly. They hug. They talk about their feelings in a way that feels genuine, not forced. For a generation of boys growing up in the 2010s, Finn was a different kind of role model. He taught them that you can slay a dragon and have a panic attack, and the panic attack doesn't make you less of a warrior. It redefined masculinity. It suggested that true strength isn't about having a heart of stone, it's about having a heart that can break and keep beating. Finn proved that emotional intelligence is a weapon just as critical as a demon bloodsword. Because if you can't process your trauma, you're just going to end up like the Ice King, screaming at penguins in a frozen castle. So, let it out. Cry over the spilled milk. Cry over the princess. It won't stop you from saving the world. It might actually be the only way to survive it. If you watch The Simpsons, Bart has been 10 years old since the Berlin Wall fell. If you watch Pokémon, Ash Ketchum stayed 10 years old for 2 decades. This is the golden rule of animation. Don't let them grow up. If they grow up, you can't sell the same lunchboxes next year. You break the status quo, but Adventure Time broke the rule, and the reason why is surprisingly biological. When the show started, Finn was voiced by Jeremy Shader, who was just a kid. He had that high-pitched, energetic, algebraic voice that defined Season 1. But then, something terrifying happened. Puberty. Jeremy Shader's voice started to crack. It got deeper. It got raspy. In a normal production, this is a crisis. Networks usually have 2 choices. Option A, fire the kid and hire a woman who can do a boy voice forever, the Bart Simpson method. Option B, make the kid pitch his voice up until it sounds painful, the Fairly Odd Parents method. Adventure Time chose Option C, let it happen. They decided to age Finn in real time. When Jeremy's voice cracked in the recording booth, they kept the take. When his voice got deeper, they wrote lines about Finn getting taller. This decision single-handedly forced the show to mature. Because Finn sounded older, the writers couldn't just give him Monster of the Week plots anymore. A squeaky-voiced kid fighting a goblin is cute. A deep-voiced teenager fighting a goblin feels empty. They had to give him teenage problems. They had to give him heartbreak. They had to give him existential dread. The lost episode here is the hypothetical version of the show where they recast Jeremy Shader. In that timeline, Adventure Time stayed a comedy. Finn stayed 12. The plot never evolved. The Lich never became a threat. But because they embraced the biology of their actor, we got a show about the pain of adolescence. We got to hear Finn's voice evolve from a squeak of excitement into the weary, gentle baritone of a veteran hero. By the time the finale aired, Finn sounds tired. He sounds like he's seen things. And it works. It teaches us that growing up isn't a betrayal of childhood. It's just what happens. And trying to force yourself to sound like a kid forever? That's just weird. Finn has a type. Princesses. Specifically, princesses who can destroy him. His first love, Princess Bubblegum was unrequited, confusing, and wrapped up in knightly servitude. His second love, Flame Princess, was intense, volatile, and literally burned him if they got too close. It was teenage love in a nutshell, passionate, dangerous, and doomed. But then, late in the game, he met Huntress Wizard, and she didn't want him to be her knight. She didn't want him to be her boyfriend. She just wanted him to keep up. Their relationship is a lost episode of romance because it barely happens on screen. It happens in the quiet moments, it happens in the subtext, and that is exactly why it works. In the episode Flute Spell, Huntress Wizard drops the hardest line about relationships in the entire show: hard meat don't get eat. Translation: if you are soft, the world eats you. And because they are both hard meat, both warriors, both adventurers, both fiercely independent, they can't really do the domestic thing. They can't settle down. It is a remarkably mature realization for two cartoon characters. Huntress Wizard understands something that Flame Princess didn't. You don't have to merge your entire identity with someone just because you like them. You can be two separate whole people who just vibe. They meditate together. They hunt together. They share a silence that isn't awkward. This is the adult relationship arc. It isn't about drama or big declarations of love. It's about mutual respect. Finn respects her skills. She respects his heart. They know that they both have jobs to do. He has to save the world. She has to connect with the forest. And they don't demand that the other person change. It is a quiet, leafy romance that stands in stark contrast to the screaming matches of his teenage years. Huntress Wizard teaches Finn and the audience that love doesn't have to be a consuming fire. Sometimes it can just be two people sitting on a log, playing the flute, and agreeing that the world is weird, but at least they aren't facing it alone. And honestly, that's infinitely cooler than a royal wedding. We usually think of Season 1 as the happy season. It's colourful, it's loud, and Finn wins every time. Except for one episode. The Jiggler. In this episode, Finn and Jake find a cute singing baby robot. They love it. They name it. They decide to bring it home because they want to take care of it. They have good intentions. They are the heroes, after all. But then, the Jiggler gets sick. Finn tries to help. He feeds it strange food. He tries to cheer it up. He does everything a hero is supposed to do. But the Jiggler just gets worse. It shrivels up. It stops singing. It starts dying. This is the first time in the entire series where Finn fails. And he doesn't fail because a monster is too strong. He fails because he is incompetent. He fails because he assumed that just wanting to help was enough. The scene where Finn is screaming, trying to force soup into a dying robot while Jake looks on in horror, is one of the most stressful moments in early Ooo history. It is a harsh reality check. It teaches Finn, and the kids watching, a brutal lesson. Love is not a substitute for knowledge. You can love something to death. You can destroy something simply by trying to own it. In the end, they have to bring the Jiggler back to its mother. They have to admit defeat. They have to put the baby back where they found it and walk away. It is a lost lesson that foreshadows the entire series. It establishes that Finn isn't a god. He is a kid. And sometimes, the most heroic thing you can do isn't to fight the bad guy. It's to admit that you don't know what you're doing and step aside before you make it worse. The Jiggler survived, but Finn's ego took a hit that would bruise for 10 seasons. He learned that being a hero isn't just about bravery, it's about knowing when to stop helping. You can't talk about Adventure Time without talking about the songs, and you can't talk about the songs without talking about Rebecca Sugar. Before she went on to create Steven Universe, Sugar was a storyboard artist on Adventure Time, but she didn't just draw. She brought a ukulele into the writer's room and changed the DNA of the show forever. I'm just your problem. Everything stays. Time adventure. These aren't just catchy tunes. They are the emotional pivots of the entire series. In the early seasons, the songs were jokes. The Fry song was funny because it was a vampire crying about French fries. But beneath the joke, there was real pain. It was the first time we realised Marceline wasn't just a cool vampire. She was a daughter with a broken relationship. Music became the show's secret weapon for storytelling. When dialogue wasn't enough, when the lore was too complicated, they sang. And the lost history here lies in the demos. If you dig around online, you can find Rebecca Sugar's original acoustic recordings for these tracks. They are raw, they are heartbreaking. They sound like they were recorded in a bedroom at 3 a.m. because they often were. This raw vulnerability bled into the show. It transformed Ooo from a D&D parody into a musical about connection. The climax of this musical philosophy is the finale. How do they defeat Golb? How do they defeat the literal embodiment of chaos? They don't use a sword, they don't use magic, they sing. BMO sings Time Adventure. The characters harmonise. The harmony literally hurts the monster. It is a profound metaphysical statement. Music is the opposite of entropy. Entropy is disorder. Music is order. Entropy tears things apart. Music binds them together in a rhythm. The show argues that the only thing strong enough to stand against the end of the world is a song that everyone knows the words to. It's the ultimate lost episode concept realised. The power wasn't in the weapons, it was in the ability to listen to each other and find the same key. So when BMO sings, "Time is an illusion that helps things make sense," he isn't just being cute. He is dismantling the concept of death with a melody. And honestly, that's the most powerful magic trick in the book. For a solid decade, watching Adventure Time wasn't a passive activity. It was homework. You watched the episode, and then you immediately went to Reddit to figure out what the heck you just saw. The fan theories aren't just speculation. They are a crucial part of the show's ecosystem. They are the lost narratives that we wrote ourselves. Let's look at the big ones. First, the coma theory. This was the classic 2010 internet edgelord theory. Finn is actually a lonely kid in a coma, and Jake is his family dog at his bedside. It was dark, it was cynical, and honestly, it was boring. It tried to explain away the magic with tragedy. But the show acknowledged it. In King Worm, Finn sees his reflection in a mirror, and for a split second he looks like a normal non-cartoon boy. The show winked at us. It said, "We see your threads. We know what you're thinking." Then there was the nuclear theory. In the early days, the Mushroom War was just a rumour. Fans analysed the opening credits, the bombs, the waste, the broken TV sets, and built a thesis that Ooo was post-apocalyptic Earth. This time, the fans were right. They were so right that the writers arguably leaned harder into it because the fans were digging for it. We essentially crowdsourced the backstory of the apocalypse. And let's not forget the Finn is insane theory, or the theory that the entire show is a D&D game played by Simon and Marcy. These theories matter because they prove that the lost episodes of Adventure Time don't just exist in the writer's room. They exist in our heads. The community built a hive mind. During the long hiatuses between seasons, we kept the show alive by dissecting frames, translating runic languages, and arguing about whether Princess Bubblegum was a fascist or just a Capricorn. We filled the gaps. Adventure Time is unique because the creators listened. They didn't just broadcast, they conversed. When we noticed the snail, they gave the snail a plot. When we obsessed over the Great Mushroom War, they gave us the history. This section is a tribute to everyone who ever posted a grainy screenshot on a message board at 2 a.m. with the caption, "Guys, look at the shadow." You weren't just watching a cartoon, you were helping to write the mythology of a generation. And so, we arrive at the end. Or, as the show would probably correct me, we arrive at the beginning of the next cycle. We have talked about lost episodes, lost timelines, nuclear wars, and dead gods. But we have to ask the big question. Why are we still talking about this? Why are you watching a video essay about a cartoon that started in 2010? Because Adventure Time wasn't just a TV show, it was a sandbox. Most cartoons are static. They are products designed to sell toys. They have a formula. But Adventure Time was a living, breathing diary. It was a place where a bunch of young, brilliant artists, Rebecca Sugar, Patrick McHale, Ian Jones-Quartey, dumped their fears, their jokes, and their trauma into a blender and hit puree. It didn't talk down to us. It grew up with us. It started as a show about a boy fighting a skeleton, and it ended as a show about a young man learning how to say goodbye to his childhood dog. And look at the legacy. Look at the family tree. Steven Universe, Over the Garden Wall, Craig of the Creek, Summer Camp Island, Infinity Train. The DNA of Ooo is in every single one of them. Adventure Time changed the animation industry. It proved that you could be weird, you could be sad, and you could be serialized and kids would still watch. It taught an entire generation of creators that their specific personal stories mattered. The show ended. The treehouse was destroyed. Finn and Jake are gone. But the ecosystem they built is infinite. We can't let go because Ooo isn't a place on a map, it's a feeling. It's the feeling of running through the woods with your best friend. It's the feeling of realizing your parents are flawed. It's the feeling of being terrified of the future, but walking toward it anyway. The final song, Come Along With Me, isn't a goodbye. It's an invitation. It tells us that the fun never ends. Not because the show goes on forever, but because the story keeps living in the people who watched it. So, go ahead, rewatch the pilot, read the comics, write the fan fiction, because as long as one person remembers the fist bump, the fun will never end. It's adventure time.